A cop paid me to stay. What he revealed at midnight shocked me. If this story speaks to your heart, stay with me till the end, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon so these stories can keep finding the people who need them. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter like an accusation. Inside, $3,000 in crisp hundreds and a handwritten note on expensive cardstock. Stay in town 2 more weeks, name your price if this isn't enough, Dr. I'd been packed for 40 minutes. My car was loaded with everything I owned, which wasn't much after 6 months of living like a ghost. The lease on this converted garage apartment ended tomorrow, and I had exactly 0 reasons to remain in Riverside Falls, a town where I'd spent half a year trying to disappear from my old life. The money changed everything. More specifically, who it came from changed everything. Detective David Reeves had been watching me for 3 weeks. I'd noticed him the first time, hard not to, when a 6'3" cop with swimmer's shoulders and steel gray eyes parks his unmarked sedan across from the coffee shop where you work the early shift. He wasn't subtle, didn't try to be. Every morning, same spot, same thermos of coffee, same intense stare that made my hands shake when I poured espresso shots. I'd convinced myself it was paranoia. Residual fear from the life I'd left behind in Chicago, where looking over your shoulder became second nature when your world imploded. But this envelope proved it wasn't paranoia. Detective Reeves had been watching me, investigating me maybe, and now he was paying me $3,000 to stay in a town I'd already mentally left. The question burning through my chest wasn't why. It was, why does part of me want to say yes? My name is Ezra Morty, and 6 months ago I witnessed something I shouldn't have. Not a crime, though my brain, trained by too many psychological thrillers, jumped there first. I witnessed my ex-fiancé, Marcus, kissing his business partner in our bed, in the apartment we'd shared for 4 years, 2 weeks before our wedding. The betrayal didn't just crack something inside me, it shattered the entire foundation of who I thought I was. Marcus and I had been the golden couple in our circle. Met in college, both architecture students with dreams of opening our own firm. We'd built a life together in Chicago, a beautiful loft in Wicker Park, dinner parties with friends who envied our connection, weekend trips to Michigan where we'd talk about the future like it was a promise we'd already made. I'd believed in us completely. So completely that I'd ignored the late nights Marcus spent at the office. The way he'd started password protecting his phone, the distance that crept into his touch like he was already somewhere else even when he held me. The day I came home early and found them together, something fundamental died inside me. Not just my relationship, not just my trust. My sense of self. Because if I could be that wrong about someone I loved, what else was I wrong about? So I ran. Sold everything that mattered, furniture, art, the engagement ring that had cost Marcus 2 months' salary. Kept only what fit in my Honda Civic. Drove until the Chicago skyline disappeared in my rearview mirror, replaced by small-town highways and the kind of silence that either heals you or breaks you further. Riverside Falls, population 8,000, offered me anonymity. A job at B's Coffee and Books, a cozy spot on Main Street that smelled like cinnamon rolls and old paperbacks, run by a woman in her 60s who asked no questions when I applied with a resume full of gaps. An apartment the size of a shoebox above a detached garage, but it was mine and the rent was cheap enough that I could save money from my barista wages. And 6 months of the kind of peace that felt almost suspicious in its simplicity. I'd stopped looking over my shoulder, stopped flinching when my phone buzzed, started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could build something new from the wreckage of my old life. Until Detective David Reeves started watching me like I was the answer to a question he hadn't asked yet. I met him officially on a Tuesday morning in late October. He walked into B's at 6:47 a.m., right when the sunrise turned the front windows molten gold and the first wave of commuters hadn't yet arrived. Up close he was devastating. Not classically handsome, his nose had been broken at least once and a scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a permanently skeptical look, but the kind of attractive that bypassed your brain and hit somewhere deeper, primal, magnetic. Dark hair threaded with silver at the temples, sharp jawline shadowed with scruff, Those eyes gray like a winter storm that seemed to catalog every detail of your face, your body language, the way you breathed. He wore his detective's badge clipped to his belt, casual authority in faded jeans and a navy Henley that stretched across his chest in ways that should have been illegal. I'd spent 3 weeks watching him watch me, and now he was standing at my counter, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woody and clean that made my stomach flip. Ezra Wright? His voice was low, rough around the edges. Smoker's rasp maybe, though I never smelled cigarettes on him. That's me. I kept my tone light, professional, even though my pulse was hammering. What can I get you? Black coffee, large. He paused, those storm cloud eyes holding mine. And a few minutes of your time when your shift ends. My hands froze on the espresso machine. I'm working until noon. I can wait. And he did. Sat at the corner table for the next 3 hours, nursing his coffee, occasionally glancing at his phone, but mostly just watching me work. Not in a creepy way, or maybe it should have felt creepy, but it didn't. His presence was just there, constant, like gravity. By the time my shift ended, I'd run through 100 scenarios in my head. He was going to arrest me for something, but what? I'd been a model citizen. He was going to tell me Marcus had filed some kind of complaint, but Marcus didn't know where I was. He was going to ask me out. Impossible. Why would a detective ask out a barista? None of my scenarios prepared me for what actually happened. You wanted to talk. I grabbed my jacket from the back room, keys jangling in my pocket. David stood, unfolding to his full height. Walk with me. It wasn't really a question, but his tone was gentle, requesting, not demanding. We walked out into the crisp November air, leaves crunching under our feet. Riverside Falls in autumn was a postcard come to life, all burnt orange foliage and white church steeples, and the kind of small-town charm that felt simultaneously comforting and suffocating. We walked in silence for 5 minutes, following the river trail that wound along the edge of town. Past couples walking their dogs. Joggers in neon gear, a group of teenagers skipping school, passing a vape pen behind the gazebo. David didn't speak until we were far enough from Main Street that the sounds of traffic faded into birdsong and rushing water. You're leaving tomorrow, he finally said. Not a question. My chest tightened. How do you? I stopped myself. Have you been following me? Investigating. He kept his gaze forward, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Fair point. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. I need your help with something, Ezra. I'm a barista who makes minimum wage plus tips, not sure what help I can offer a detective. You're observant? David stopped walking, turned to face me fully. The morning light caught the silver in his hair, made his eyes look almost translucent. 3 weeks ago you noticed a man in the coffee shop, older guy, late 50s, always ordered decaf with cream. You told Buh he made you uncomfortable, said something about him felt off. My stomach dropped. How do you know that? Because Buh called me 2 hours after you told her. His expression softened fractionally. Buh's been a friend of the department for years. She trusts her instincts and she trusted yours. That man's name is Walter Finch. The name meant nothing to me. Walter Finch has been under federal investigation for 2 years, David continued. Embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. We've been building a case, but he's careful, covers his tracks, stays one step ahead. What does this have to do with me? David's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking near his ear. Walter's been careful for 2 years, never made a mistake, but he came to this town, this specific town, population 8,000, 3 times in the last month, and every single time he went to Buh's Coffee and Books, and every single time you were working. The implications settled over me like ice water. You think he's watching me? I think he noticed you, David said carefully. And I need to understand what he sees when he looks at you, which means I need you to stay in Riverside Falls just 2 more weeks. Let me finish this investigation with you here where I can monitor the situation, where I can keep you safe. Safe, the word tasted bitter on my tongue. You're telling me I'm potentially in danger from some white-collar criminal and your solution is for me to stay. My solution is to keep you close. His voice dropped, intensity bleeding through every syllable. Walter Finch is dangerous, Ezra, not in the obvious way. He's not going to pull a gun on you in broad daylight, but he's connected. He has resources, and if he's interested in you for some reason, leaving town makes you vulnerable. A moving target. Here, I can protect you. By paying me off, I yanked the envelope from my jacket pocket, shoved it toward him. $3,000, that's what my safety is worth to you. Something flickered in David's eyes, hurt maybe or shame. That's what I could afford, he said quietly. I know you've been saving to leave, but mentioned your lease ends tomorrow. I looked into your finances. You what? I'm a detective, Ezra, it's my job. He didn't flinch from my anger. You've got maybe $5,000 saved, enough to get you to wherever you're planning to go, but not enough to feel secure when you get there. I'm offering you $3,000 more, enough to give you options, enough to start fresh with a real cushion. In exchange for what? Being bait. In exchange for letting me do my job, David said firmly. 2 weeks, that's all I'm asking. Let me figure out what Walter wants. Let me keep you safe while I finish this case. And when it's over, when Walter's in custody and you're no longer at risk, you can leave with a clear conscience and enough money to build whatever life you want. The sincerity in his voice cracked something in my defenses. This wasn't some manipulative cop playing games with a civilian. This was a man desperate to protect someone, even a stranger. Why do you care? I whispered. You don't even know me. David held my gaze, and for just a moment I saw something raw in his expression, vulnerable. Because I've seen what men like Walter Finch do to people who get in their way, he said softly, and I won't let that happen to you, not on my watch. I said yes. Not because of the money, though God knows I needed it. Not because I believed Walter Finch was actually a threat. The whole thing still felt surreal, like I'd stumbled into someone else's crime drama. I said yes because when David Reeves looked at me, I felt seen for the first time in 6 months. Really seen, not as the broken ex-fiancé running from heartbreak, not as the quiet barista who kept his head down and didn't make waves. As someone worth protecting. And that feeling, terrifying and thrilling in equal measure, was enough to make me unpack my car and renew my lease for another month. The next 2 weeks became a strange, suspended reality. David checked in daily, sometimes multiple times a day. At first, it was purely professional, text messages asking if I'd noticed anything unusual, phone calls confirming I'd locked my doors, quick visits to the coffee shop where he'd order his black coffee and scan the room like he was memorizing every face. But gradually something shifted. The conversations got longer, more personal. He started asking about my life, not in an interrogation way, in a genuinely curious way. Where I'd grown up, small town in upstate New York, population even smaller than Riverside Falls. What brought me to Chicago? College, architecture school, dreams of designing buildings that made people feel something. Why I left? I gave him the sanitized version. Relationship ended badly, needed a fresh start. And David shared too. He'd grown up in Portland, Oregon, became a cop at 22, detective by 30, moved to Riverside Falls 5 years ago after something he called a case that went sideways. He didn't elaborate and I didn't push. We had an unspoken agreement: share what you're comfortable sharing, leave the rest for later. If there was a later. On day 4, David brought dinner to my apartment. Showed up at 7 p.m. with Chinese takeout from the place on Main Street, Lo Mun, General Tso's chicken, enough spring rolls to feed a small army. Figured you might not want to cook after a shift, he said, standing in my doorway looking almost shy. My apartment was a disaster, boxes still half unpacked from when I'd decided not to leave, clothes draped over my second-hand couch, the kind of lived-in chaos that comes from not expecting visitors. It's a mess, I apologized, clearing space on my tiny kitchen table. I've seen worse. David set down the food, glanced around. His eyes lingered on a charcoal sketch I'd pinned to the wall, a drawing of the Chicago skyline at sunset done from memory. You drew this? Hobby. I grabbed plates from the cabinet. I used to be an architecture student before everything. It's beautiful. The simple compliment made my chest warm. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that felt easy instead of awkward. Can I ask you something? David said finally, setting down his chopsticks. Depends on the question. Why Riverside Falls? Of all the places you could have run to, why here? I considered lying, giving some vague answer about finding it on a map, liking the name, whatever. But something about David's steady gaze made me want to tell the truth. I closed my eyes and pointed, I admitted. Sounds dramatic, but that's literally what I did. I had an atlas in my car. Yeah, I'm one of those people who still uses paper maps, and I just pointed, landed on Riverside Falls, figured it was as good a sign as any. David smiled, a real one that reached his eyes. Fate brought you here. Or random chance. Maybe they're the same thing. On day 6, something shifted between us. I was restocking the pastry case at B's when David walked in earlier than usual, around 5 p.m. instead of his typical morning visit. He looked stressed, tension in his shoulders, exhaustion bruising the skin under his eyes. "Rough day?" I asked as I handed him his coffee. "You could say that," he rubbed his face. "Got a lead on Walter, followed it for 6 hours, went nowhere. Want to talk about it?" "Can't, case details." But he didn't leave, just stood there, coffee in hand, looking at me like I was the only solid thing in his day. "You look like you need to hit something," I observed. David's laugh was startled, that obvious. "I have a degree in reading stressed out people, comes with the barista territory." I wiped down the counter, considering. "There's a gym 2 blocks from here, boxing set up in the back. I go sometimes after work to clear my head." "You box?" "Badly, but it helps." I met his eyes. "My shift ends in an hour, come with me." I wasn't sure what possessed me to invite him. This was supposed to be professional. He was protecting me from a potential threat, not becoming my workout buddy. But the word yes fell from David's mouth before I could second-guess myself. The gym was nearly empty on a Wednesday evening. Just us, an older man doing laps in the pool, and a teenager half-heartedly lifting weights in the corner. I showed David the boxing setup, heavy bags, speed bags, gloves in various sizes hanging on the wall. "Been a while since I did this," David admitted, lacing up a pair of gloves. "It's like riding a bike, except the bike is a leather bag and you're punching it." He laughed. God, I loved making him laugh, and approached the heavy bag. What followed was 45 minutes of the most unexpectedly intimate experience of my life. Watching David box was watching someone shed their armor. He moved with precision at first, controlled jabs, measured combinations, the technique of someone trained in discipline. But gradually something broke open. His punches got harder, faster, more aggressive. Sweat darkened his shirt, his breath came sharp and ragged. And I realized he wasn't just working out. He was exorcising something. When he finally stopped, hands braced on his knees, gasping for air, I grabbed a towel and handed it to him. "Better?" I asked softly. David looked up, face flushed, eyes bright. "Yeah, actually, yeah." "Want to talk about what that was?" He straightened, wiped his face. "The case, Walter, it's bringing up old stuff." "What kind of old stuff?" David hesitated. I could see him calculating how much to share. 3 years ago, I worked a case in Portland," he said finally. "White-collar crime similar to Walter's operation. I had a witness, a young accountant who'd uncovered the fraud. Guy named Nathan Park, 26 years old, smart, scared, willing to testify." His voice roughened. "I promised Nathan I'd protect him, put him in a safe house. Thought I'd covered every angle, every possible leak, but someone got to him anyway, killed him 3 days before he was supposed to testify." The weight of David's guilt crashed over me like a physical force. "David. They found him in the bathtub, made it look like a suicide, but I knew better, I knew." He looked at me, eyes haunted. "And I couldn't prove it. The case fell apart without Nathan's testimony. The people responsible walked free, and Nathan's family, they blamed me, and they were right too." "That's not your fault," I said fiercely. "Isn't it?" David's laugh was bitter. "I made promises I couldn't keep. I told that kid he'd be safe, and he died because I failed him." Without thinking, I closed the distance between us. Reached out and took his hand. His skin was hot, rough with calluses. His fingers curled around mine like he was drowning and I was solid ground. "You can't save everyone," I said quietly, "but you're trying to save me, that counts for something." David's eyes searched my face. "What if I fail again? What if you don't?" The question hung between us, heavy with possibility. And then David did something that changed everything. He lifted my hand, the one he was holding, and pressed it flat against his chest. Right over his heart. I felt it hammering beneath my palm, fast and strong and terrifyingly alive. I need you to understand something, David said, voice low and rough. This case, Walter, the investigation, all of it, it's important, but you, Ezra, you're not just a witness I'm protecting. You're... He trailed off, searching for words. My heart was a wild thing in my chest. I'm what? Someone I'm starting to care about way more than I should. The confession split the air between us. I should have pulled away, should have reminded him this was professional, that I was leaving in a week and a half, that getting emotionally involved was a spectacularly bad idea. Instead, I said, good, because you're someone I'm starting to care about too. David's breath caught. And for one suspended moment, I thought he might kiss me. But he didn't. Instead, he squeezed my hand once, gentle and deliberate, then stepped back. We should go, he said quietly, it's getting late. I nodded, disappointment and relief warring in my chest. Because as much as I wanted him to kiss me, I also knew, whatever was building between us was too important to rush. This wasn't just attraction. This was something that could break us both if we weren't careful. On day 9, everything went to hell. I was restocking the pastry case at B's, a Tuesday morning, slow and quiet when the bell above the door chimed. Walter Finch walked in. I recognized him immediately from the description David had given me. Late 50s, average height, silver hair combed precisely, expensive suit that didn't quite match the small-town aesthetic, and eyes that assessed everything with predatory intelligence. My hands froze on the blueberry scone I'd been arranging. Good morning. Walter's smile was pleasant, warm, even, but it didn't reach his eyes. You must be Ezra. Every cell in my body screamed danger. Can I help you? I kept my voice steady, professional. Just coffee, black, 2 sugars. He leaned against the counter too close, invading my space deliberately. You're still here, I thought you were leaving town. The casual knowledge of my plans made my blood run cold. Change of plans, I rang up his order with shaking hands. Me boyfriend convince you to stay, Walter's eyes glittered with amusement. Or was it the cop? Fuck. He knew about David. I don't know what you're talking about. I handed him the coffee, desperate to create distance between us. Walter took the cup, fingers brushing mine deliberately. Sure you don't, kid, but let me give you some free advice. Detective Reeves has a habit of getting people hurt. You should ask him about Portland, about Nuthin Park. The name hit me like a physical blow. Have a nice day, Walter said pleasantly and walked out before I could form a response. I called David immediately. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold my phone. He answered on the first ring, Ezra. He was here, my voice cracked. Walter, he came to the coffee shop, he knows about us, about you, he mentioned Portland, he said. I'm on my way, don't move, don't go anywhere, I'll be there in 5 minutes. He made it in 4. Burst through the door of Buzz looking like controlled chaos, badge out, eyes scanning the room for threats, hand hovering near the gun at his hip. When he saw me standing behind the counter, pale but unharmed, relief flooded his expression. What happened? He crossed to me in 3 strides. Tell me everything. I did, every word Walter had said, the way he'd looked at me, the casual threat wrapped in friendly advice. By the time I finished, David's jaw was locked tight enough to shatter. You're not staying here, his tone left no room for argument. Bah. Bah emerged from the back, concern etched across her face. What's wrong? I'm taking Ezra with me, can you manage the shop? Of course, Bah looked at me, then at David, understanding passing between them. Go, stay safe. David's hand found the small of my back, guiding me toward the door. Where are we going? I asked. My place, Walter doesn't know about it, you'll be safe there. David's house sat on 3 acres at the edge of town, surrounded by towering pines and the kind of privacy that felt deliberate. It wasn't what I expected. Not a bachelor pad or sterile modern space, this was a home. Warm hardwood floors throughout, worn leather furniture that looked comfortable rather than stylish. Built-in shelves crammed with everything from true crime to literary fiction to dog-eared fantasy paperbacks. A guitar propped in the corner. Photos on the mantle, David with a woman who had his eyes, David with an older couple who must have been his parents, David in his police academy uniform looking impossibly young. You live here alone? I asked, taking it all in. Yeah, David locked the door behind us, engaged the deadbolt, bought it 2 years ago, needed space after everything in Portland. The house felt like him, steady, safe, real. Make yourself at home, David said, softer now. Guest rooms down the hall, second door on the left, bathroom next to it. I need to make some calls, coordinate with my team, update them on Walter's movements. David, I caught his arm before he could disappear into his office. Thank you for this, for keeping me safe. His expression softened, always Ezra. The promise in those 2 words wrapped around my heart like a fist. I spent the afternoon exploring David's house like it was a museum exhibit about his life. The books revealed a mind that hungered for stories, fiction and nonfiction in equal measure. Mysteries, thrillers, but also poetry, Mary Oliver, Ocean Vuong, Richard Suchan. The kitchen showed someone who cooked real meals, spice rack organized alphabetically, cast iron skillet seasoned to perfection, a stack of handwritten recipes in the drawer, some in David's neat handwriting, others in a looping script that might have belonged to his mother. And in the living room, tucked on a side table, a photo album. I shouldn't have looked, it was invasive, crossing a line. But I opened it anyway. The first few pages were childhood photos. David as a gap-toothed kid with scraped knees. David as a gangly teenager holding a baseball bat. David in his early 20s, police academy graduation, pride shining in his eyes. Then the photos shifted. David with a man around his age, dark-haired, bright smile, arms slung around David's shoulders, the two of them hiking, at a beach, in front of a Christmas tree, the easy intimacy of people who knew each other completely. Nothing Park. It had to be. The accountant David had failed to protect, the witness who died in a bathtub while David blamed himself. I stared at the photos, understanding clicking into place. David hadn't just failed to protect a witness. He'd failed to protect someone he cared about, maybe even loved. That's nothing. I jumped, nearly dropping the album. David stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. I'm sorry, I said quickly, I shouldn't have. It's okay, he crossed the room, sat beside me on the couch, took the album from my hands with careful reverence. I don't look at these much anymore, too painful. You cared about him. Yeah, David's thumb traced Nothing's face in one of the photos. We met through work, he was consulting on a fraud case, brilliant with numbers. We became friends, then more than friends. We were together for 8 months when he uncovered the embezzlement scheme. His voice went flat, distant. I should have pulled him from the case immediately, should have convinced him to walk away, let someone else be the witness, but Nothing was stubborn, said it was the right thing to do, that he couldn't live with himself if he stayed silent, so I promised I'd protect him, and I failed. David, I turned to face him fully, you can't carry that forever. Why not? His eyes met mine, blazing with guilt and grief. He's dead because of me, because I wasn't good enough, smart enough, careful enough. And now here you are, another person in my care, another person Walter Finch is interested in, and what if I fail again, what if I lose you too? The rawness in his voice cracked me open. I did something reckless. I cupped David's face in my hands, forced him to hold my gaze. You're not going to lose me, I said firmly. Because I'm not Nathan, I'm not going to testify against criminals or put myself in danger. I'm just a barista who drew Walter's attention for reasons we don't understand yet. And you, David, you're doing everything right, keeping me safe, being here, that's enough. What if it's not? Then we'll figure it out together. The word together hung between us like a promise. And this time, when David's eyes dropped to my mouth, he didn't pull away. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to stop this. I didn't. Our lips met in the softest, most devastating kiss of my life. David kissed like he did everything else, with complete attention, total presence. His mouth was warm and careful, tasting faintly of the coffee he'd been drinking all afternoon. His hand came up to cradle the back of my head, fingers threading through my hair. And I melted into him, 6 months of loneliness and fear dissolving in the gentle pressure of his lips against mine. When we broke apart, David's forehead rested against mine. I shouldn't have done that, he murmured. Why not? Because you're under my protection, because this is complicated, because I kissed him again, harder this time, swallowing his protests. Stop overthinking, I whispered against his mouth. For once in your life, David Reeves, just feel something without analyzing it to death. His laugh was shaky. You're dangerous. Good. We spent the evening in careful domesticity. David cooked dinner, chicken piccata with roasted vegetables, competent enough that I teased him about having hidden chef skills. We ate at his kitchen table, knees touching under the wood. Talked about everything and nothing, our favorite books, worst movies we'd ever seen, the weird quirks of living in a small town after years in cities. It felt terrifyingly normal. Like we'd been doing this for years instead of just over a week. After dinner, David built a fire in the stone fireplace. We ended up on the couch together, my head on his shoulder, his arm around my waist, watching the flames dance while the house settled into nighttime quiet around us. Tell me about Chicago, David said softly, your life before here. So I did. Told him about Marcus, about the engagement, about walking in and finding my entire future shattered in one moment. I thought I knew him, I said, staring at the fire. 4 years together, we talked about adopting kids someday, opening a firm, growing old in that apartment, and the whole time he was lying to me, sleeping with someone else, and I never saw it coming. That's not your failure, David said firmly. That's his. He's the one who broke trust, who betrayed you. You loving him completely doesn't make you naive, it makes you brave. Doesn't feel brave, feels stupid. It's not. David's arm tightened around me. Opening your heart to someone is the bravest thing you can do. The fact that Marcus didn't deserve it doesn't change that. I turned to look at him, this detective who'd inserted himself into my life and somehow become essential in barely 10 days. Is that what you're doing? I asked quietly, opening your heart. David's eyes searched mine, trying to, terrified I'll fuck it up. You won't. You can't know that. I can believe it, that's enough for now. He kissed me then, slow and deep, the fire crackling beside us and the night pressing close around the windows. And for the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than broken. I felt whole. At 11:30 p.m. I couldn't sleep. Lay in David's guest room, a cozy space with navy walls and a window overlooking the pines, and listened to the house settle around me. My mind wouldn't shut off. Walter's visit to the coffee shop, the veiled threats, the way he'd known about David, about Portland, about Nathan. What did he want? What was his endgame? At 11:47 I gave up on sleep. Padded down the hall in borrowed sweatpants and a t-shirt David had lent me, both comically too big but soft and smelling like his laundry detergent. Found him in the kitchen, staring at a glass of whiskey like it held answers he couldn't find anywhere else. Can't sleep either, I asked softly. He glanced up, something vulnerable in his expression. Occupational hazard, my brain doesn't know how to turn off. I poured myself water, leaned against the counter beside him, thinking about the case. Thinking about you, his honesty was disarming. About what Walter wants, why he approached you today, it doesn't make sense. What do you mean? David ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding through his composure. Walter's a ghost. 2 years we've been building a case against him and he's never made a mistake, never been careless, but showing up at your workplace, making contact, mentioning me by name, that's reckless, that's personal, and I need to understand why. Maybe he's trying to scare me, get me to run so your investigation falls apart. Maybe, but David didn't sound convinced. Or maybe there's something about you specifically that matters to him, something we're not seeing. A thought occurred to me, have you looked into my background, like really looked? Basic checks, no criminal record, no outstanding warrants, no suspicious connections, you're clean. What about Marcus, my ex-fiancé? David's eyes sharpened, what about him? I don't know, maybe there's a connection there. Marcus was in commercial real estate, worked with a lot of investors. What if one of those investors was connected to Walter's operation? What's Marcus's full name? Marcus Chen, he worked for Chen Development, his family's company. David was already pulling out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. Chen Development, based in Chicago, commercial properties. He went still. What? My pulse kicked up, what is it? Chen Development received a $15 million investment 3 years ago from a venture capital firm called Redwood Equity. David's voice had gone flat cop mode. Redwood Equity is one of Walter Finch's shell companies. We've been tracking it as part of the money laundering investigation. The floor tilted under my feet. So Marcus's company is connected to Walter. Indirectly, yeah. David set down his phone, looked at me with something like awe. Ezra, this might be it. This might be the connection we've been missing. But why would Walter care about me? I left Chicago. I had nothing to do with Marcus's business. Did Marcus know you were leaving? I left a note, told him I was done, that I'd found out about the affair, that I never wanted to see him again. Did you say where you were going? No, I didn't even know where I was going. David's expression turned grim. But you had mutual friends, mutual contacts, someone who might have told Marcus you ended up in Riverside Falls. My stomach dropped. You think Marcus told Walter where I was? I think Marcus might have mentioned it to the wrong person, and that information made its way to Walter. And I think Walter saw an opportunity. David started packing. If Walter's organization is under investigation and one of their investors' ex-fiancé suddenly shows up in the same small town where the lead detective on the case lives, that's not coincidence, that's surveillance. Walter's been watching me through you. The realization hit like ice water. I'm not the target, I whispered. You are. Walter's using me to get to you. Which means you're in more danger than I thought. David's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression went sharp. Fuck. What? My partner, they've got movement on Walter. David's eyes met mine, urgency crackling. He's heading toward this address right now. Terror spiked through my chest. How does he know where you live? I don't know, but we're out of time. David grabbed his keys, his gun, everything moving with practiced efficiency. We need to leave now. Where? Police station. It's the safest place until we can get you into protective custody. He pulled me toward the door, then stopped, cupped my face in his hands. Ezra, listen to me. Whatever happens in the next hour, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Yes. Good, let's go. We made it to the car. David's hand was on the ignition when headlights flooded the driveway. A black sedan blocking our exit. Walter Finch stepped out, silhouetted against the glare, and everything inside me turned to ice. Fuck, David's hand moved to his gun. Stay in the car, lock the doors. If anything happens, you drive straight through him, understand? David. Promise me, Ezra. I promise. He kissed me hard and fast, then got out of the car. Through the windshield, I watched him approach Walter. Two men facing off in the driveway, the November night cold and clear around them. I couldn't hear their words, but I could see the tension in David's shoulders, the casual confidence in Walter's stance. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Walter was too calm, too controlled. Like he'd already won. Then I saw it. Movement at the edge of the tree line, a second figure emerging from the shadows. Someone else was here. David, I screamed, throwing open the car door. Behind you. David spun, gun raised. And Walter moved. Not toward David, toward me. He crossed the distance in seconds, hand clamping around my wrist, pulling me against him. Cold metal pressed against my temple. A gun. Walter had a gun to my head. Drop your weapon, detective, Walter said pleasantly, or I blow a hole through this beautiful boy's skull. David froze, every muscle locked. Let him go, Walter. Drop your weapon. The second figure emerged fully, a younger man, mid-30s, with dead eyes and a gun trained on David. We were outnumbered. Outmaneuvered. David's eyes met mine across 10 feet of driveway. I saw the calculation in his expression, the desperation, the terrible math of a man trying to save someone he cared about. Slowly, David lowered his gun. Set it on the ground. Raised his hands. Good, Walter purred in my ear. Now we're going to have a conversation, a real one, about what happens next. Walter forced us into the house at gunpoint. His associate, never introduced, just a silent enforcer, kept his weapon trained on David while Walter maintained his grip on me. We ended up in David's living room, the fire from earlier reduced to embers. Sit, Walter ordered David, gesturing to the couch. David sat, hands visible, every line of his body coiled tension. Walter kept me standing, gun still pressed to my head. Do you know why I'm here, detective? To gloat, David's voice was steady despite everything. To threaten me, you're under federal investigation, Walter. This ends one way. Does it? Walter smiled. Because from where I'm standing, I hold all the cards. I have your witness, I have leverage, and I have something you've wanted for 3 years, answers about Nathan Park. David went very still. What did you say? Nathan Park, your boyfriend, the accountant who was going to testify against my organization. Walter's voice was conversational, almost friendly. Did you ever wonder how we found him, how we got past your protection? You're lying. Am I? Think about it, detective. Only 3 people knew where Nathan was staying, you, your captain, and your partner at the time. So who do you think sold him out? The implication hung in the air like poison. You're trying to get in my head, David said flatly. I'm telling you the truth. Your partner, Detective Sarah Brennan, was on my payroll for 2 years. She told us where Nathan was. She's the reason he died. Walter's eyes glittered. And she's still on the force in Portland, by the way, still collecting her paychecks from both sides. I felt David's world shatter from across the room. You're lying, he repeated, but his voice cracked. Call her, ask her about the $50,000 deposited into her offshore account the week Nathan died. Ask her why she retired so suddenly 6 months later. Ask her. Enough, David's hands clenched into fists. What do you want, Walter? I want you to stop. Walter's tone hardened. Stop the investigation, destroy the evidence you've collected, convince the feds to drop the case, do that and I let your boy here walk away unharmed. And if I don't? Then Ezra becomes the next Nathan, and you get to live with another failure. The cruelty was surgical, precise, designed to break David in the most fundamental way. But Walter had made a mistake. He'd underestimated both of us. David, I said quietly, don't do it. Walter's grip tightened. Excuse me. Don't destroy the case, I said, meeting David's eyes. Don't let him win, not because of me. Ezra. I mean it. My voice steadied, strengthened. You've been building this case for 2 years. Nathan died for this. If you cave now, his death meant nothing. All of it, everything you've sacrificed, it's for nothing. Very touching, Walter said coldly, but you're about to die for your principles. Is that really worth it? Yes, I said simply. And I meant it. Because in the 10 days I'd known David Reeves, I'd learned something fundamental about him. He was the kind of man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, who blamed himself for things beyond his control, who needed to believe he could protect people, save people matter. If he destroyed this case to save me, it would destroy him. And I loved him too much to let that happen. Wait. I loved him. The realization bloomed through me like sunrise, clear and undeniable. I loved this broken, beautiful detective who'd paid me $3,000 to stay in town and somehow become the most important person in my life. And I wasn't going to let Walter Finch take that away from either of us. David, I said softly, it's okay, whatever happens it's okay, just promise me you'll finish this, put him away, make it mean something. Tears shone in David's eyes. I can't lose you. You won't. Because I had a plan. A stupid, reckless, probably going to fail plan. But it was the only option I could see. I went limp in Walter's grip, sudden, complete dead weight. He stumbled, caught off guard, gun shifting away from my head for just a second. 1 second was enough. David moved like lightning. Launched himself across the room, tackled Walter, both of them crashing to the floor. The gun skittered across the hardwood. Walter's associate raised his weapon, aiming for David. And I grabbed the fire poker from beside the hearth and swung with everything I had. Connected with the guy's wrist, heard bone crack, the gun fell. David and Walter were grappling on the floor, trading brutal punches. I kicked the guns away, both of them, sent them sliding under the couch. Police, hands up. The front door exploded inward. Officers flooded the room, 5, 6, 7 of them, weapons drawn, shouting commands. David had called for backup. Must have triggered some kind of silent alarm before we'd gone inside. Within 30 seconds, Walter and his associate were on the ground, cuffed, surrounded by cops reading them their rights. And David. David crossed the room and pulled me into his arms. Held me so tightly I could barely breathe, his whole body shaking. "You're okay," he kept repeating into my hair. "You're okay, you're safe, it's over." I clung to him, adrenaline crash hitting like a wave. "I love you," I heard myself say. "I know it's insane, I know we've only known each other 10 days, but I love you, David Reeves." He pulled back just enough to look at me, eyes red-rimmed and fierce. "I love you too," he said, "and you're right, it's completely insane, but I don't care." He kissed me there in the middle of the chaos. With cops processing the scene around us and Walter being dragged out in handcuffs and the fire reduced to ash in the hearth. He kissed me like I was the only real thing in his world. And maybe I was. 3 months later. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon rolls and possibility. I stood behind the counter at B's, pulling espresso shots with the kind of muscle memory that came from 6 months of practice. But things were different now. I wasn't running anymore. My apartment, the one I'd almost left, was filled with furniture I'd actually chosen, art on the walls, plants that I managed to keep alive more often than not. My Honda Civic sat in the driveway with new inspection stickers and a functioning transmission, courtesy of the mechanic David recommended. And on my left hand, a simple silver ring. Not an engagement ring, not yet anyway. A promise ring. David had given it to me on Christmas Eve, both of us sitting by his fireplace with snow falling outside and the world narrowed to just us. "I know it's fast," he'd said, sliding it onto my finger. "And I know we're still figuring this out, but I want you to have something that says I'm serious, that this, us, is real." "It's perfect," I'd whispered. And it was. The door chimed. David walked in at 6:47 a.m. right on schedule. 3 months and he still came in every morning. Still ordered the same black coffee. Still looked at me like I was the best part of his day. "Morning," I said, already reaching for his usual cup. "Morning," he leaned across the counter, stole a quick kiss that made B whistle from the back room. "We still on for dinner tonight?" "Absolutely, your place or mine?" "Mine, I'm cooking." "Brave man." His laugh warmed me from the inside out. Walter Finch was serving 22 years in federal prison. The trial had been swift, the evidence overwhelming once the dam broke. Turns out Walter had been running his fraud operation for over a decade, millions of dollars siphoned through shell companies and offshore accounts. And when the FBI started pulling threads, the entire organization unraveled, including the revelation about Detective Sarah Brennan. David had been right to trust his instincts. She'd been on Walter's payroll, had sold out Nathan Park, and was now facing charges of her own. David had testified against her with the kind of quiet devastation that broke my heart. But afterward, I'd held him while he grieved, for Nathan, for the partnership he'd trusted, for the version of himself that had believed everyone played by the same rules. "You okay?" I'd asked him that night. "No," he'd said honestly, "but I will be because I have you." I'd started drawing again. Not just sketches, real projects, commissioned work for local businesses, a mural for the library, illustrations for a children's book written by a local author. Riverside Falls wasn't Chicago, it didn't have the architecture scene I'd once dreamed of joining. But it had something better, space to breathe, to heal, to build something new. And it had David. David, who came home every evening and told me about his day, who cooked terrible experimental dinners that we laughed over, who slow danced with me in the kitchen when his favorite song came on the radio. David, who'd taken the broken pieces of both our lives and helped me see they could be reassembled into something beautiful. That night, over pasta with too much garlic and wine that cost $15 but tasted like celebration, David said, "I have something to tell you." My chest tightened. Good something or bad something? "Good, really good." He set down his fork, reached across the table to take my hand. "I've been offered a position, supervisory detective, more responsibility, better pay. It's a promotion I've been working toward for years." Pride swelled in my chest. "David, that's amazing." "There's a catch." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "It's in Portland." The single word landed like a stone. Portland, where Nathan had died, where Sarah Brennan had betrayed him, where all of David's worst memories lived. When would you start? I asked carefully. 3 months, but Ezra, he squeezed my hand, I'm not taking it. What, why not? Because my life is here, you're here, and I'm not leaving unless you want to come with me, so the real question is, would you? My breath caught. Are you asking me to move to Portland with you? I'm asking you to build a life with me, wherever that is. David's eyes were steady, certain. Portland, Riverside Falls, the middle of nowhere, I don't care as long as I'm with you. The weight of his words settled over me like a blessing. I spent 6 months running from my past, I said softly, convinced that moving would fix everything, but it wasn't distance that healed me, it was you, it was this town, it was choosing to stay. So what are you saying? I'm saying yes, let's go to Portland, let's build something new there together. David's smile could have lit the entire house. He stood, pulled me up, and kissed me in the middle of his kitchen. I love you, Ezra Morty. I love you too, David Reeves. 3 months later, we loaded a U-Haul with everything we owned. Said goodbye to Riverside Falls, the town that had saved us both in different ways. B hugged me so tightly I couldn't breathe, made me promise to visit. You two are good for each other, she said, wiping tears. Don't forget that when things get hard. We won't, I promised. Portland was everything and nothing like I expected. A city big enough to have architecture opportunities but small enough to still feel manageable. David's new position kept him busy, but he made time, always made time. For date nights at tiny restaurants we discovered together. For weekend hikes in the Columbia River Gorge. For quiet evenings where we'd cook dinner and talk about our days and exist in each other's orbit like we'd been doing it forever. I got a job at an architecture firm, junior designer, nothing glamorous, but it was a start. Started rebuilding the dreams I'd abandoned when Marcus broke my heart. And every night I came home to David. To the man who'd paid me $3,000 to stay in his life. Who'd revealed at midnight that he was falling in love with me. Who'd turned my escape into a homecoming. 1 year later, I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. Took a moment to orient myself, Portland apartment, new furniture, David's arm heavy across my waist. He was still asleep, face soft, the lines of stress smoothed away. I traced the scar through his eyebrow, the gray at his temples, the mouth I'd kissed 1,000 times and still never got tired of. I can feel you starring, he mumbled, eyes still closed. Can't help it, you're pretty when you sleep. Creep. You're creep. He cracked one eye open, smiled, yeah, mine. Later, over coffee in our kitchen, a real kitchen in our apartment with both our names on the lease, David said, I have something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket. My heart stopped. Ezra Morty, David opened the box, revealed a ring, simple gold band, elegant and understated. I know we said we'd take our time, but I've realized something. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to wonder what if or someday or eventually. I want now, I want you. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're mine and I'm yours and we're building this life together. Tears blurred my vision. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Yes, I said through the tears, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, you ridiculous romantic detective, yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, perfect fit, like it had been made for me. And he kissed me in our kitchen, morning light pouring through the windows, the rest of our lives stretching out before us like a promise. Because this was our story. Not perfect, not easy. But ours. Two broken men who found each other in the most unexpected way. A detective who paid a stranger to stay. A runaway who discovered that sometimes home isn't a place, it's a person. A gay love story that started with fear and surveillance and $3,000 in an envelope. And ended with a ring, a kiss, and the understanding that the bravest thing you can do is choose to stay. To build. To love. Even when, especially when it terrifies you. The end. Should their story continue, comment part 2 if you want more. Like if this made your heart race red. Subscribe for weekly gay romance stories filled with emotional connection, healing journeys and heartfelt LGBTQ+ love.